was one of 3 people stabbed to death in Nottingham last summer. Barnaby, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates' killer was sentenced not to prison, but to a hospital order after being convicted of manslaughter. Today, their families met the Prime Minister with the possibility of a public inquiry if they don't get the answers they need.
I feel now, with hindsight, that I was foolish to just trust in our legal system. I hate to say that because I do feel let down.
That interview in full coming up in just a moment. Also on the way, Ofsted is told to make major changes as MPs say they have deep concerns about school inspections after the death of head teacher Ruth Perry. Tonight, we're going to be joined by her sister, Julia Waters. Fresh hope for the family of murdered Muriel Mackay as her daughter travels to Trinidad to face her killer after more than 50 years. And the village hunting for a missing monkey on the loose in the Highlands. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Last week, the killer of Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates were sentenced to a hospital order after pleading guilty to their manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The judge said Valdo Calacane would very probably be detained in hospital for the rest of his life. Very probably is hard for Barnaby's parents, Emma and David, to accept when their son will definitely not be coming home. Instead of drawing a line under this part of their ordeal, the Webbers are left with more questions than answers. Emma saying they were foolish to trust the British legal system. Well, this evening, they, along with Grace and Ian's families, have been meeting the Prime Minister in Downing Street, and Rishi Sunak told them that all avenues are open, including potentially a public inquiry.
We have concerns about the police and how they investigated. We have concerns about the CPS and how the case was built. We have concerns about what happened in the custody suite and samples not being taken. We have, and the mental health trust. So this is a multi-agency, in a way, inquiry, which I can't see how all of these agencies will be covered without something really comprehensive. And I think it'll be something like an inquiry in my mind, whilst a review has been launched, and while that is going to be useful into the very acute failings of the mental health trust, because at the end of the day, this person was a paranoid schizophrenic who was let go on the streets and wreaked havoc. But I think if there are so many agencies involved, there is going to have to be something, pretty umbrella-like to cover all of the agencies.
The father of Grace O'Malley Kumar speaking there outside number 10. We'll bring you my interview with the Webbers in just a moment. But first, Sky's Becky Cottrell is in Downing Street this evening and spoke to the families as they came out of number 10. And Becky, Grace's father there, very realistic about the prospects of them getting answers to the big questions that came out of that sentencing. But there is some hope for this public inquiry if they don't get the answers they want.
Yeah, as you, Sarah-Jane, said, it's not been ruled out. And as Sandra Kuma said there, it feels like if there is to be a full and comprehensive look at what happened, the public inquiry is the way to go. So far, there has been an announcement today that there will be a review into the mental health services in Nottingham that dealt with Calacane. Just a reminder on his background, since 2020, he's been sectioned 4 times. He was known not to be taking his medication or cooperate with mental health services. There was an arrest warrant out for him at the time that he committed these killings, and he had committed assaults in the past. So someone that was on the radar of both the mental health services and the police, and that is why the family want this kind of all-encompassing public inquiry, also to look at the University of Nottingham, because Calacane was a student during the time that he was in and out of hospital and clearly struggling with his mental health. But I thought it was interesting seeing them today compared to on the court steps after the sentencing. Clearly a sense of relief, some sense that the people that matter are listening to them and that something will be done. But now it's not just the services that potentially failed the families that need to be looked at and that there is pressure on. The pressure now is also on the Prime Minister and on government to make sure that the families get the answers they need.
OK, Becky, thank you. Well, I sat down with Barney's parents, Emma and David Webber, before the sentencing. Well, Emma and David, thank you so much for speaking to us. We're at Somerset County Cricket Ground, a place that Barney really loved. I just want to ask, first of all, how you've been over the last 7 months.
Yeah, I can't believe it's 7 months. Rubbish. Words you probably can't say on camera, but it's been, dark, difficult, grief-stricken, some moments of light, I suppose. Trying to find a way through. And here we are in a new year. That was hard, wasn't it? Hitting 24.
I think you're going through a lot of firsts all the time, and then of course we had Barnaby's birthday on the 11th, which that was a hard day. It was a really hard day.
That must have been a really difficult one to know what to do.
It was the worst first, for sure. Because we've had Charlie's birthday when he hit 16, which feels like a significant number, doesn't it? And then that was in September. Then obviously Christmas, New Year, your birthday.
Yeah, I forgot my birthday. I didn't really care.
And then Barnaby's, and would have been 20, and that again feels, like a landmark. Wouldn't have been a teenager anymore.
Yeah.
And that was tough. That was the worst one because I think because the passage of time, because of the process of the judicial system, the rage and the anger are building, as well as the grief and the loss.
You've survived the last 7 months, and in a way, the legal part of this story, the criminal justice part of this story, has reached its conclusion. And you touched on it there, Emma. The rage and anger you felt, of course, because of what happened to your son, but also about the process over this last 7 months. Should we start at the beginning? When something like this happens to you, you expect the wheels of justice to start turning immediately, for you to be involved in that, for you to be supported, because this has happened to you. You and Barney are the victims in this. Emma, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
You didn't feel that was the case. Well,
no.
How did it unfold?
I feel now, with hindsight, that I was foolish to just trust in our legal system. I hate to say that because I do feel let down. And I've sense-checked myself to make sure it's not an outlet for me. The same with you. And I'm sure Grace's parents wouldn't mind me saying the same with them, to make sure that where we have got these grave concerns, that they're justified and they're there for a valid reason, rather than us just needing an outlet for our anger. What I don't dispute is obviously that, the police caught him. They've done their investigations. We were led to believe all of summer that it would be a murder charge for our son, for the other 2 victims, and then attempted murder for the other 3 victims. It's a massive crime. It's a massive, heinous crime. And so we were ill prepared for being told, and a fait accompli from the CPS being presented to us on the Friday before the pre-trial hearing. So this is the very end of November, that they were going to be accepting a diminished responsibility, which meant manslaughter. And I think that was the moment everything turned. But I think the relevance is the date that I've given there. It was the end of November, nearly the beginning of December, before we had any inclination. So there's so much to talk about support that victims and victims' families need. There is some. It's absolutely nowhere near enough. I feel it's weighted completely the wrong way, our justice system, the resources. But
Weighted
in the perpetrator or defendant, whichever route. It's not just us affected by this. And I do know anecdotally that lots of other families have been saying the very similar thing. It's a horrible club to be in. We're in this club where our lives have been shattered. It's a catastrophic, life-changing event. And how do you even begin to unpick and find your way forward, especially when it's so high profile, when you can't look at newspapers or the news for weeks because your son is on the front, and horrible stories coming out about the perpetrator and just the viciousness, and it's so difficult. So I think I just trusted in that'll be done, the criminal proceedings will be done, and then we're going to have to start looking at what happened and what went wrong. Undoubtedly something would have gone wrong in the system for this monster to be out in society. What can we do and have a voice to help improve victims of crime? And the big, huge question. I assumed that our voice might go toward is knife crime. And I didn't expect for a second to be sat here saying, I have such grievous concerns and feel so let down by our judicial system in this country. It didn't even start, I don't know about you, it didn't click to me that it could ever be anything than a murder charge.
So, cases you feel that the police have let you down in terms of if somebody's entering a plea on diminished responsibility, the evidence to support that, you don't feel appeared until November? Months in.
We didn't know details of the offence, details of the perpetrator and details of parts of the police investigation until we requested a meeting with the police and the CPS ourselves and the O'Malley Kumars, and that was the first week in December. So again, sort of stating how late all of this is. And that arose because we were dissatisfied with what we were told in our meeting with the CPS with regards to the plea. So they were hoping to satisfy us in that meeting that the decision had been the right one. And we went into that meeting wanted to go, okay, fine. So you are the experts, I do trust in you after all.
Yeah.
And we sat through 6 hours of the most extreme trauma you could possibly imagine as a parent, having to watch a timeline from 7:30 p.m. on the 12th of June, starting in St Pancras, right the way through to 5:30 a.m. on the 13th of June with the arrest, and everything in between. And we didn't watch moving CCTV, but we did have to see some stills. We did ask and wanted to see some stills, not all. And from everything that we learned from that 6-hour meeting, at the end of which I was physically sick, it's the most trauma, well, it's not the most traumatic thing I've had to do, but it's up there with the top 3. I think all 4 of us said, actually, our conclusion from today is the complete opposite of, I think, what you were hoping.
Yeah.
And we don't, no, we don't believe it. I think our question is, we don't refute he's mentally ill. We don't refute the past history. What we do refute is the assessment of whether he was capable of making decisions on that night, stroke morning. And from the evidence that we were presented with, the court had been presented with, but it's not a trial, it's just a hearing, he was capable. He had a rucksack full of weapons. He had those with him from the very beginning. He hid in the shadows for 10 minutes before he attacked our children. And the attack is so brutal, I don't know how, now I know the details, how I'm ever going to get over that. Yeah. He phoned his brother about 15 or 20 minutes after he had murdered Grace and Barney, and told his brother to get the family out of the country because they weren't going to see him for a long time. And when his brother said, "What are you going to do?" and he said, "I've already done it," and then proceeds to the secure unit where he tries to break in, and then has he meets the night warden who comes out to investigate what's going on. They have about 5 minutes talk together. He doesn't murder him on his mission to kill that he's been told to do, apparently. He goes back once the warden's gone to get an iron bar out of his rucksack of weapons and tried to smash the window 4 times. Couldn't get in, so then packs up, calmly walks away across to where Ian is, attacks Ian, takes a van, and then the rest is as documented. Stops at red lights, slows down for speed bumps. I cannot see how, for such a protracted period of time, how that's proven psychosis, that he wasn't capable of making decisions. That's our question.
But we've been told by many people, and we've got lots of, as I said, lots of sort of different angles around us, and they've all said it doesn't end. It doesn't end with the trial. It doesn't end with that.
Sentencing.
The things can change. I mean, the coroner hasn't, as far as I understand, the coroner hasn't. They haven't been involved properly yet. So, you know, well, they have obviously, but they're not. They haven't done their inquest. That will happen. That can cause things to change. So, I guess we just have to wait and see what happens.
A big part for any family going through something like this, a hearing, a sentencing, if it goes to a trial, is your impact statement, your chance to not speak through lawyers, but to say in your own words to the man who carried out the attacks on your child, exactly what this has done to you as a family. What is it that you wanted to make clear in that statement?
Yeah.
I think for me, it's the destruction. It's the senselessness of what he's done, but it's the destruction he's caused to not only our family, to myself, Emma, and Charlie, but to the wider family, to the friends. He's caused, and that's just our side, he's caused this huge ripple effect. He's damaged people's lives forever. He's effectively sentenced us to a life of this, through no fault of our own, certainly no fault of Barnaby, Grace's or Ian's, and the 3 other victims. It's just, he's done something that is unforgivable. And to me, I want him to know that, and he needs to know that it isn't something. And I'm not just, as a father, of course, I'm never going to forgive him. How could you? And how could any? I challenge anyone that said they could forgive. You cannot. But I don't think the public would forgive him, because I think once you actually hear what he's done and how he's done it, it's just like, no, it's unforgivable. This isn't just to me, it's not like a pub brawl that's gone wrong. It's premeditated. He's thought about it. At any point he could have stopped. I want him to know that I don't believe him. I don't believe the stuff that's coming out of his mouth now. He's manipulative. He's a liar. He's done it in the past. He's doing it now. But now he's just a murderer.
But I think it's about not giving him too much power. I mean, I addressed part of my victim impact statement to him because it's important and relevant to do that. But what he's done is I open with Barney didn't lose his life in Nottingham because it was stolen. It was taken from him. And it's the taking of a life. He had a right to life. He had a right to a future. And what's happened is it's impacted everybody's future, but it's taken his future. And I have no capacity to forgive, and I do hope that one day he feels true remorse for what he's done, because that will be crippling for him and probably his family as well. But it's about the loss for us from him being taken, and that's what mine was focused on. And one of the hardest things as a parent was Charlie, who's 16, having not been at the hearing, which I feel is appropriate, but he wanted to have his voice heard, and that's entirely appropriate. So he had to record his victim impact statement for the murder of his brother, the brutal, senseless murder of his brother. And watching him struggle to do that was so painful and makes you so angry, because it's that's been impacted. It's his future too. He's got a future, and we'll give him the best future he could possibly have, but it will be a different one than the one we planned.
How you never stop grieving.
No.
You learn to live with it. And when a loved one is stolen from you, I won't say lose, because in your circumstances, you're quite right, he was stolen from you. What does that look like day to day? How do you include Barney as part of your family, because you are a family of 4?
His room is still pretty much as it was when he left. So we don't want it to turn to a shrine for him, because otherwise that's going to be a perpetual thing that's going to just bring us down. But we've left it as it is at the moment, and I mean personally,
we put the light on every night.
Yeah, the light's on. Initially we shut the door, which
for a few days.
Yeah, and then I think Charlie wanted the door shut. And then we both discussed it, and we didn't want it shut. And then we said, look, you need to let Barney back into our life again. So we have to open that door. And he's loved it. So I catch him quite often going and sitting in there and talking to Barney.
He's put some weird, sweets out on Barney's desk, isn't it? What are they called? No.
I don't know. He bought some horrible sweets, but apparently they were Barney's favourite, and he liked them. So he bought and gave them to put them on Barney's desk. And yeah, I would ask anyone to, if people say, I can't imagine your pain, a good example is you walk past your child's bedroom when it's empty, and however they've left it, that's the way it's always going to be, and that's tough. The shoes in the same position, it's all things you would have told him off for when he was here, say, clean your room, you're not leaving it because you don't want anything touched. No.
And there are reminders everywhere where we are
today. I keep looking out of the window because I keep thinking of was here for is I remember him drinking far too much in his sixth form ball over there. Sat over there with the T20s on a few times I came. And
well, your regular seats, your season tickets, the seats that you had, David, are just over your shoulder there.
Just up over behind, yeah. You know, I had some lovely stories and some pictures sent to me of Barney's chair in every game, every T20 game that was on. He was there, would buy him a pint. And they put a picture of him on there, and I think they put a shirt on there as well. I think there was a shirt over the back.
These guys have given us a signed shirt, which is at home on his page.
Yeah. Well, we came to the game, didn't we, against Notts.
Yeah.
So the Nottingham players signed a shirt. So
the cricket club.
Cricket club have been fantastic. They've been really helpful.
One of the amount of stuff like Bishop's Hole Cricket Club, which is his home team, didn't play for Somerset, just make that clear. They did a fundraising day back in the summer, and they raised enough money to make, I could send you a photograph, it's called Barney's Bar. It's this little mobile, not little actually, it's quite big. It's beautifully done with this amazing, like, Barney's Bar, and it all lights up, doesn't it?
Neon sign.
Sounds like something he'd have loved.
Well, actually, one of his friends said to me, he said, you know, that Webbs would have, like, his ego would have been out of control with all of this. And, I think it probably would have been.
Probably would have been.
The irony is the person that would love this the most is the one that isn't here for it all, but... You know, we're doing what we can for him, and I think most parents probably would in our position, but it's not easy to be here and speaking, but owe it to him.
What does the future look like for you without him? And I know that's a really difficult question, and it's day by day, but I think inadvertently you speak on behalf of so many families who have had loved ones stolen from them in circumstances like this. You never think it's going to happen to you.
No, with that family, you know, you have that sort of, that family that happened to, that tragedy, the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, it's just, you know, those kids did nothing wrong. They were just walking home. They were less than 5 minutes from being safe.
None of them did anything wrong.
And this monster hid in the shadows, and so it's you know, there's, I suppose if there's an accident or an illness, as cruel and as tragic as it is, you can somehow quantify what happened, whereas this is so senseless and so cruel that it's, I think we're still processing that. But you said, you know, the word future, and there is a future, and, you know, it's a, I don't want to use the new normal because it sounds cliche, but it's, you have to, one foot in front of the other, get to the end of the day. All those adages are true, because you do. And something that I wrote in my eulogy for him was that, and it's true, it feels like in a world of darkness, if you imagine a night sky, this is what I said back then, that then you look up and you occasionally see, if you look hard enough on a really dark night, you can see the stars, and you can see more and more the harder you look. And that's how I, in my head, creatively think about our future coming forward. There'll be more and more and more light, and then the dawn will come back, and one day we won't be all right, we won't be brilliant, but we'll be able to have a future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone invested in this story that doesn't know you as a family feels like they know Barney from his pictures, from the wonderful things you and countless others have said about him.
Yeah.
How do you want people to remember him? You don't want people to remember him as a victim, but as a person, as a person that had a bright future ahead of them.
Yeah.
What do you want people to remember about your son?
I think I want them to remember him as Barnaby Webber, Barney Webber, either or is fine. And you asked earlier about how the strength to try and speak in Nottingham, and I know where that strength came from. I remember the moment I was thinking, what am I going to say? I need to say something in the city hall thingy, and I thought, I don't want him to be a victim. I don't want it to be, as you hear all the time, you know, they lit up a room and and this, and of course that's true, he did, but he was also stubborn, difficult, mulish when he wanted to be as well, but he was genuine and amazing. And I think I want people to know that the person he was, and that beautiful smile, and, you know, it just, and if out of this tragedy we can evoke some positive change, then that's not going to heal us or bring him back, but it's something.
Well, as you've just heard, Emma and David Webber have faced the most dark and difficult time since Barnaby's life was stolen, and they are facing now some dark and difficult questions. Why was their son's killer on the streets? So many missed opportunities, which highlight a stretched NHS mental health provision and police system that too often work against rather than with one another. Today, perhaps, the hope of some answers, a meeting with the Prime Minister and the possibility down the line of a public inquiry. They're not the first family to ask questions like that, and just as Barney's bedroom light is left on every night, so will hundreds of other families keep similar habits as a reminder that their loved ones were there and their questions deserve answers. Still to come on the UK Tonight. A national scandal will have an investigation into the mental health patients sexually abused while in the care of the National Health Service. And face-to-face with her mother's killer, Muriel Mackay's daughter visits Trinidad in a hope of finally locating her mother's body.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent. From fishing communities to bustling cities, we spend every day reporting from across the region.
An investigation by Sky News and The Independent has uncovered evidence of nearly 20,000 sexual assaults and complaints of harassment in NHS England mental health trusts. Among the allegations, more than 800 claims of rape or sexual assault, but only 95 cases are believed to have been reported to the police. Well, now, dozens of patients and their families have come forward to share their experiences, including a mother of two who escaped from psychiatric care. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has her story.
He was touching me, rubbing my hand, my arm, and then went up. He then asked me if he could continue, and I said no. He repeated a couple of times, and I said no. I can't believe I've got into this situation. He shouldn't be touching me. God, he shouldn't even be in my room.
Rivka has struggled with her mental health since her teens. Those were her own words from a diary she kept, detailing a sexual assault on her in a hospital ward by a member of staff.
He said to me he wasn't going to leave until I stopped crying. He told me I am not allowed to tell anyone. He kept saying, I've got a wife and 2 kids. I can't lose this job. And that was really what made me realise how bad this was.
Rivka's attacker was convicted and jailed. In a statement, North London Mental Health Partnership told Sky News, "We are deeply sorry for what happened to Miss Grant while she was under our care in 2016. We have since strengthened all aspects of our safeguarding processes, including ensuring that service users under one-to-one observation are always assigned a member of staff of the same sex." A successful conviction for a sexual assault on a mental health patient is extremely rare. Many attacks are never reported to the police, and patients are not always believed.
My real emphasis is on a proper registration of workers, a proper complaint system, training people to recognise the signs, and then at the top end, real notice taken by the police in any complaint of this kind coming out of a mental health hospital, which in itself would send a big message down.
A joint investigation by Sky News and The Independent has uncovered 20,000 complaints of sexual assaults in mental health trusts across England since 2019. Have you been surprised by the scale of the abuse?
I'm not surprised at all. I believe there is so much going on that is not reported, not listened to. I was able to tell my story. I was able to get it out there. But if I'd been unable to do that, it would have just been shoved under the carpet like many others.
Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Well, in response to our report, a government spokesperson said sexual violence or misconduct of any kind is unacceptable and has no place in the NHS. And NHS organisations have a responsibility to protect both staff and patients. We're working closely with the NHS to ensure that anyone receiving treatment in a mental health facility receives safe, high-quality care and is looked after with dignity and respect. If you scan the QR code on your screen, you can listen to more from Patient 11, Sky News and The Independent's new investigative podcast. All episodes are available now, wherever you get your podcasts. Still to come on the UK Tonight, I'm going to speak to the sister of Ruth Perry, the head teacher who took her own life after an Ofsted inspection, as MPs call for an end to one-word school gradings. And face-to-face with her mother's killer, Muriel Mackay's daughter visits Trinidad in the hopes of finally locating her mother's body after 50 years. MPs have called for an end to single-word Ofsted grades for school inspections. It comes after the death of primary school head teacher Ruth Perry. Ruth took her own life after an Ofsted inspection in 2022, which graded her school as inadequate. Well, earlier this month, Ofsted apologised for its role in Ruth's death. The school has since been regraded as good. Well, Ruth's sister, Julia Waters, joins me now in the studio. Julia, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us. You've been a force to be reckoned with on behalf of your sister to try and effect change. First of all, I want to talk about Ruth. You saw firsthand what the Ofsted inspection system did to her. She unravelled before your eyes. Can you give me an idea of what she was going through before she took her own life, Julia?
Well, you just said that I'm a force to be reckoned with. Ruth was my sister. We were quite similar. You know, she was, and one of her colleagues described her as a tough cookie. You know, she's quite resilient. She was very experienced. She was very well respected. And that Ofsted inspection just completely destroyed her. It was instant, really, both during and then after the inspection, and the long wait she had all over the Christmas holiday, still waiting for the report to come out and not being able to share the judgment with anybody else because Ofsted forbade it. It just corroded her. You could sort of see her whole sort of sense of being, unravelling, you used that word. It was like that, and there was nothing we could do, try as we might, to put it right. The harm had been done, and then there weren't structures in place to support her and help her from the people who might have been able to do that.
Julia, there's been a lot of concentration on this one-word grading, and for those who aren't aware, Ruth's primary school had the highest rating, and then in that one inspection went to the lowest. And you talk there about the fact that she knew before she could tell any of her employees, any of the parents, that this had happened, and that was part of the Ofsted system. That's the way it was. And to appeal an Ofsted decision is a very complicated, not weighted in favour of the school kind of process. The Education Committee has been taking a look at this, and they've said more action is needed. But there is widespread and deep concern about the inspection system. So much focus on this one-word grading, but there's more to it than that, isn't there?
Oh, there's so much more, and the report highlights that as well. The one-word judgment is the most obvious manifestation of a deeply flawed system. And it's the thing that everybody sort of hooks onto. It's the thing that up till now the government has been absolutely categorical they won't shift on. And it's the thing that's used to divide people. So this to set up this fake division between parents on the one hand and teachers on the other, teachers' welfare on one hand and children's welfare on the other, when we're all concerned about the same things. Parents want the best for their children, teachers and head teachers want the best for the children in their schools, and teachers and head teachers' welfare is inseparable from the welfare of the pupils whom they teach and take care of. So the word being used as this sort of lazy throwaway thing that, it's useful for parents. It's inaccurate.
But also what I didn't realise is if you get the lowest rating, whatever that issue is, it could be sorted out within a couple of months before the actual grading is published. But the Ofsted system doesn't allow for that wiggle room.
Or didn't. I mean, that's one of the things. I think it's a significant change that the report says that you should only get inadequate if a school is fundamentally failing to keep children safe, which was manifestly not the case at Caversham Primary School. There were issues around paperwork, and that was enough.
Well, Ofsted have apologised. They have a new chief, Sir Martin Oliver. Has he reached out to you?
Yeah, I've had a meeting. I've had a long meeting and email exchanges and promises of further meetings.
Do you feel you're being listened to?
Yeah, definitely. I think the major difference between him and his predecessor that should reassure the teaching profession is that he was a teacher and a head teacher himself. He's been on the receiving end of Ofsted inspections, both good and bad. And he seems genuinely committed to change, says that's why he took on the role. So yes, I had a almost 3-hour meeting with him. He listened to my concerns. He said my list of concerns were similar to his list of concerns, which actually is similar to the list of concerns in the Parliamentary Inquiry report that came out today.
Yeah, because Ofsted said, you know, they're going to give these recommendations careful consideration. And from the discussions you've had, you believe, you know, from what you've heard from them, that they're going to take it seriously. All of us know a teacher. All of us have had that conversation with a teacher about, I've got an Ofsted inspection next week, they're working over the weekend, prepping. We've seen the stress. We perhaps don't understand it unless we're in it or we're living with someone going through it. But after Ruth's death, you had so many people reach out to you detailing similar experiences, and it harks back to this system, you know, that the Education Committee said there is widespread and deep concern. What have teachers been saying to you?
Well, one of the words that the Education Select Committee picked up on that was recurrent in their conversations with teachers was terror. I mean, actually, terror. It's not just, a little bit of mild stress and anxiety, terror at Ofsted. Yeah, I've been contacted by hundreds of teachers and head teachers, but it's particularly the head teachers. You know, the head teacher is responsible, has a duty of care to his or her employees, and his or her employees, the rest of the members of staff, which is not to say that Ofsted isn't stressful for all staff. It really is. But who's looking after the head teacher? You know, they're in this very vulnerable and isolated position at the top of a school with the parents looking to them, the local community looking to them, their staff looking to them, their name over the door of the school, their name on the Ofsted report. You know, my sister felt deeply, deeply, deeply responsible for that judgment. And there was no one really looking out for her and really able to give her the support she needed and the reassurance she needed that she was a great teacher and a great head teacher, and, you know, she would always have a role in the local authority or whatever. No, she was terrified she was going to lose her job, which has been one of the sort of almost automatic likely consequences of an inadequate or two requires improvement judgments. And that's another thing that the report picks up on as not right. It's too high stakes. You shouldn't live in fear of losing your job on the basis of a 2-day inspection.
As you said, terror amongst teachers in so many cases for Ofsted reports, and you raise a really good question, who's looking after the teachers, particularly head teachers. Julia, thank you so much pushing this on your sister's behalf. We're so sorry for your loss, but thank you so much for speaking up on behalf of your sister and for other teachers. Thank you. Really appreciate your time. Well, if you've been affected by this story and you want to talk to someone, the Samaritans are there. They're on 116123, or you can contact them by email, joe@samaritans.org. The daughter of Muriel Mackay, who was murdered in the UK more than 50 years ago, has flown to the Caribbean to come face to face with her mother's killer. He was deported to Trinidad after serving 20 years in prison for Muriel's kidnap and murder. But now he wants to help her daughter, Diane Mackay, find her body. Our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt, made the trip with Diane.
4,000 miles from London, an 8-hour flight, but a journey of more than 50 years. Diane Mackay has come to Trinidad for an extraordinary meeting.
Hello, Diane. It's me. I came all this way to see you.
Thank you, God bless you.
It may look like a greeting of old friends, but Nizamuddin Hussain is the man who kidnapped and murdered Diane's mother, Muriel. Muriel's grandson came too.
I'm so happy to meet you. I am too.
Nizam was 22, his brother Arthur 12 years older, when they kidnapped Muriel. They were jailed for life. They held her at a Hertfordshire farm and demanded £1 million ransom. Muriel was married to Alec Mackay, a newspaper executive. The kidnappers mistook Muriel for Anna, then wife of Rupert Murdoch, who was Alec's boss. Nizam claims Muriel collapsed and died, and he buried her in the farmyard. The family needs his help. to find her remains.
I thought you've got to try and see him as the young man that did the crime, not this old, funny old guy who's left. You know, you've got to see him, see through all that. And that's the only way I can cope with it.
Scotland Yard searched the farm 2 years ago, but Nizam says they dug in the wrong place.
We come just not to say hello, we come to show you photos. We have a lot of photos of the farm before, we have a lot of photos of this farm now, and we want you to show us exactly where you put my mother, because I would like to take her out and I would like to give her a burial she deserved, because she was a lovely person.
It was time to look at the photographs of the farm, old and new.
Here was your fence along the back. This was the fence, the hedge along the back.
Yeah. There was much Nizam couldn't remember, but he was adamant on the burial site.
2 feet from the hedge, that's where the body is.
And the police won't listen to us until we have very good details. They don't want to know.
After 2 days of questions, Nizam was back at home. With some food for you. It's a world away from the plush hotel where he'd met his visitors. Did you tell them everything you know?
I think so.
The Mackay family recently offered him $50,000 to talk to them, but he did it for free. The fact that Nizam has rejected the money fuels the family's belief that he is telling the truth, and he really has identified the spot where they will find Muriel's remains. But they can't be certain he's told them everything. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Trinidad.
Coming up on the UK tonight, Mikel Arteta calls reports that he's leaving Arsenal fake news. And we're going to go live to the Highlands tonight, where the search continues for a runaway monkey.
I went through a similar experience where I was sentenced to the electric chair. I remember the judge telling me I was going to be taken to the Rockview State Prison where 2,200 volts of electricity would course through my body and end my life. And then they changed it and made it lethal injection. So I wasn't ever sentenced to be stabbed with a needle, but they changed it. And that's what they're doing here. So what's bothering me, is troubling me, is they tried to execute this man for hours with needles. Imagine laying on a gurney and they're poking you in your groin, in your neck, all over your body, trying to get a vein to murder you, and you succeed in surviving that, only to be an experiment like a guinea pig. So this is horrifying that the state of Oklahoma and the state of Mississippi are going to start doing this, because successfully, opponents of the death penalty stopped them from getting the drugs. I'm so grateful that I went to death row, because all my childhood friends died of drug overdoses or violence or suicide, and I was spared the AIDS epidemic, and I started to learn self-respect and self-love. And I elevated my entire life because I was on death row. And even though I was there wrongly, it didn't matter. I needed to use that opportunity. I was physically tortured for years for being a rapist murderer they thought was mentally ill. I went through a lot of degradations, but I learned when people are harming you, you can really find it within yourself at that moment to love you. I was suffering from hepatitis C infection after they beat me and broke my teeth in prison, and I contracted this illness that was killing my fellow prisoners. So after listening to them die in horrifying fashion with the nurses taunting them, I asked that my appeals be dismissed and my lawyers be dismissed so that I could be executed. I spent 23 years in solitary confinement. That means every day of my life I was locked up 23 hours a day while I was being openly tortured. They took me off of death row and they put me in a mental cell because they feared I was going to kill them for what they did to me. So I spent the last 8 months of my life in prison in a mental ward being told that no human being could endure what we did to you without you being angry enough to kill one of us. So we're not going to trust you until we open the door.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, we're going to go live to a village in the Highlands where there's a monkey on the loose from a nearby zoo. Yeah, I mean, how do you follow that?
Don't ask me about that.
Well, there's no monkeying around in the cricket at the weekend, was there? Test cricket alive and well.
Yeah.
For the cricket fans, it was huge. Even if you weren't a cricket fan, this is the kind of Test cricket that will suck you in, right?
Yeah, massive win for the West Indies, highly unexpected against Australia. And from our point of view, England beating India in most unlikely circumstances, having been miles and miles behind. Are they going to win the series now? Bookmakers say no, they're not. India are still odds-on to win the series. It's a 5-match series. But the fact that we've seen Bazball, named after Brendan Baz McCullum, the coach, in action for the first time in India, and it worked, is very encouraging. I think it is that more courageous, no-fear approach that enabled, on his debut, Tom Hartley, the big, tall, left-arm spinner, to take 7 wickets after his very first ball in Test cricket was lumped over the ropes for 6. He came back. Ben Stokes, the captain, kept in bowling. And it also helped Ollie Pope to, amidst enormous pressure, having failed in the first innings, score the match-winning innings with the bat of 196. Should we hear from him?
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, if you shut up and he'll talk, all right?
I feel like we go into a Test match pretty relaxed now. We put in all that work in Abu Dhabi and that pre-camp, and then when the week arrives, we kind of just try to enjoy it. And I think that's probably allowed us to come back from that big deficit that we did have, and that's exactly what we want to do as a team, and we'll keep doing hopefully in the future.
OK, one more thing before I do shut up. I mean, India, obviously, still the bookies' favourites, but they've had some fitness concerns, which could be good news for England.
I think it is good news for England. India are already without their kind of talisman for the series, but today's news is that one batsman and one all-rounder are out, injured, definitely out of the second Test. Ravindra Jadeja, who's a very dangerous customer with bat and ball, and KL Rahul, who's a very calming presence as well with the bat. Both injured, both definitely out of the Test. So with, as I say, Virat Kohli also missing for India for the first 2 Tests. There's plenty of good news for England, but don't count any chickens. You know what it's like. Shall I tell you about the rest of the sport? Because there's some football around today.
Let's do it.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Well, Stuart, it's been a few months now since the end of what was an incredible Ashes series. How are you adjusting now to life after playing cricket?
Yeah, really enjoying it. I think ultimately finishing on my own terms was really important for me, and I knew that I wanted to finish by my last ball playing for England. England versus Australia was a major pinnacle for me in Ashes cricket, and it was such a exciting and exhilarating series that I almost got to the stage where I don't know if it gets any better than this, really. So, yeah, it was great to be able to sort of make the decision on my own, finish on my own terms, and I don't think it will really properly hit me until the Test team play again, and Jimmy Anderson and Ben Stokes are walking out with an England cap on in their whites. I think that might sort of feel real, that I won't ever do that again. But no, at the moment I've got no regrets and feel really happy.
In the book you spoke about the fact that retirement only really came to you during the Old Trafford tests. So you came to a massive decision quite quickly.
Yeah, within 10 days, I think. So yeah, it was pretty stressful. Ultimately, anytime you walk away from something you love, it's really difficult. And I was loving playing cricket. I was loving working under Stokesy and Baz. It was great fun. I didn't feel much pressure. The communication was really good, and I was bowling really well and felt fit. So a lot of those things would say, carry on playing. And I honestly...
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Right, time for a look at the weather now.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Tuesday should be an improving picture for Britain and Ireland, with the cloudy, dank weather breaking up and becoming confined to the southeast. This evening, the heaviest rain is starting to pull away into the North Sea. It's clear and chilly over Ireland, Northern Ireland and central and northern Scotland. Elsewhere, generally quite cloudy with patchy rain in places.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Right, the search is on for a monkey that has escaped from a zoo in the Highlands. The Japanese macaque escaped from its enclosure at the Highland Wildlife Park in Kincraig on Sunday. Now, the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, which runs the park, has assembled a team to recapture the animal. The public has been urged not to approach it. Carl Nagel, however, who lives nearby, captured this footage in his back garden yesterday morning. And Carl joins us now. Right, Carl, your morning on a Sunday started pretty much like mine did, a little lie-in and a scroll through social media. What happened next?
I was woken by a telephone call from my daughter exclaiming, "Dad, there's a monkey on your street." Apparently a video had been posted on Facebook of a neighbouring garden with said macaque running through it. And I was like, "Dad, what are the chances in our garden now?" And got up, went to my patio door, and there I was in my dressing gown with a primate nibbling my nuts.
How did he look? Was he happy to be out?
He was, and I'm sure still is, living his best life. Plentiful supply of food from my feeders and probably many more in the neighbouring gardens. We've all been urged to take them in now to disincentivise him from not returning to the park to join his troop. But yeah, he was there, proud as punch, just having a go at the feeders.
Well, look, Carl, good news that he looked fit and healthy. They haven't caught him yet. Final question, we've only got 10 seconds. What way did he go?
He went that way.
That way. OK, I'll pass that on to the team. Carl, thank you so much.
Nice
that is all from the UK tonight. If you live in the Highlands, keep your eyes peeled for that macaque. We'll see you tomorrow.